Good morning. I'm Pat Benedict, your worship associate for this morning's virtual service on January 2nd, 2022. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we're unable to gather together in person, but we are fortunate to be able to gather together in spirit. Thank you to everyone who makes this possible. Welcome to this opportunity to be together. This is a time to celebrate and acknowledge the joy, comfort, and sometimes the challenges that we face as a community. Welcome to this day and this new year. Our guest speaker today is Shabana Chiruka. Shabana has over 30 years of psychotherapy and substance abuse treatment experience. Born in England and a resident of Tampa for more than 40 years, she graduated from the University of South Florida with a Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology and a Master of Science degree in mental health counseling from Nova Southeastern University. She is licensed by the state of Florida as a mental health counselor and is a certified addictions professional. In 2012, she opened Wiregrass Counseling and has been treating anxieties, depression, addictions, PTSD, and other mental health conditions. Welcome, Shabana. Please join us at coffee time today right after the service. Shabana will be there for more conversation and to answer any questions.
Good morning.
Good morning. Before we begin our service, I'll place the stones for our stone ritual. I placed 2 stones for the past week. The first is for a joy, the second, a sorrow, and the third stone is for an intention for the upcoming week. Our opening words today are by Paul Stephen Dodenhoff. For this 1 hour. For this 1 hour, Spirit of life, we let go. For this 1 hour, may we let go of our anxieties, our fears, our anger, our self-doubts, our regrets, our petty grievances, and our distractions. If only for this 1 hour, let the flame of this chalice burn them from our hearts and minds and light our way to peace and serenity for this one holy hour. Our opening hymn is number 188, Come, Come, Whoever You Are. Our reading for meditation today is by Maureen Kaloran. As we weather winds of change, may we have wisdom to cherish moments of stillness. As we recollect times of challenge and of pain, may we remember also the graceful blessings of our lives. As we look to future unknowns, may we have the boldness to trust that there is unimagined good yet to come. Shabana.
Good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. And I certainly appreciate being a part of this service and being able to be here with everybody. It is kind of an interesting experience since I know we're doing this over Zoom, and I am not very technologically savvy, so that just makes it a little higher anxiety for me, just so you know. That's what we're here to talk about, I think. So what I was, I'm going to share my screen. All right, so here we are. We're going to talk today a little bit about mental health during times of uncertainty. I know. I just want to wish everybody Happy New Year. I'm sure we're all hoping for a happy and healthy 2022. And I know the last few years have been particularly difficult for all of us. And, you know, I think it's wonderful that you guys have figured out a way to still get together even when things are a bit uncertain. So I think it's wonderful that you have made it through that challenge in terms of being able to do this over Zoom. Okay, so what I wanted to talk a little bit about today was just how we're going to talk about a few things, but I figured we'd start by just talking a little bit about what happens to the body when we're under stress, because we don't always recognize that we are under stress. Oftentimes, you may have been through different periods of your life where you know, different things have happened to your body, and then you go to the doctor and they're like, oh, you're just under stress. And that can be a little discouraging, especially when you don't feel like you're under stress. You feel like you're doing all the stuff that you're normally supposed to be doing. But you've got, you know, issues where your skin is not acting right, or your hair might be falling out, or your fingernails are all dry and brittle, whatever it is. But the point is that the body responds to stress wherever we're holding it in our body, and some of us will hold it in different places. So just as a visual, I wanted to offer this this sort of traffic light kind of analogy, where the red is if it's a life threat. So if, for example, we are you know, getting chased by a tiger, right? We know that that is a life threat. We are either going to figure out, am I freezing, am I running, or am I fighting? What am I doing in this situation? That yellow spot is what we can, you know, that danger spot. So this is where fight or flight kind of kicks in, and we're worried about our own self-protection and how we take care of ourselves. And then the green place is that wonderful place where we all feel safe and relaxed, and you know, hopefully are able to rest, and all of our bodily functions are functioning appropriately. And I would say, just based on what I have seen in my own practice, that a lot of people out of the last 2 years are sort of operating in that yellow place a lot of the time, because there is so much uncertainty and there is so much going on in the world that we are kind of in a place of feeling that fight or flight, and we have mobilized our limbic system. So the limbic system is sort of that middle region of the brain. You know, it's basically a donut-shaped structure, and it borders the brainstem and the cerebrum, and it's basically in control of all of our emotions, fear, aggression, drives for food and sex. And then, you know, the hippocampus, the amygdala, and the hypothalamus are all part of that center part of the brain, the limbic system. So you might ask yourself, you know, why is the world so uneasy right now? And, you know, I think sometimes because I think a lot of the world's inhabitants right now are operating out of their limbic system. Everybody is has mobilized their fight or flight. And so that's why you see people kind of acting in ways, you know, you see people acting crazy in the supermarket or on a plane or whatever, and it makes you wonder what's going on. But I think people are just really operating from this sense of a fear. So as we move into sort of how the the body and how we psychologically deal with the reactions to stress. Usually fear is the first thing. So we're going to feel some sense of fear, and that sometimes will lead into panic, right? The fear, you might have fear in terms of your health or your financial situation. You may be concerned about a lack of resources in your own life or the lives of loved ones, or anybody in your life, your friends, that kind of thing. Then there's panic. And I think we probably have all experienced this to some degree when you know, a year and a half ago, when you would go to the grocery store and you couldn't find any toilet paper, and you couldn't find any bleach, and you couldn't find any hand sanitizer. I remember making hand sanitizer at home and ordering, you know, alcohol off of Amazon and mixing it with aloe and stuff and making little containers of home hand sanitizer because we couldn't find it. And what was that a result of? It was a result of everyone's panic, everybody sort of having a momentary freak out, where they all needed to just go buy all, I don't know what the deal was with toilet paper, but you know, I don't know why everybody needed toilet paper, but you know, everybody did. They went and bought their toilet paper, they bought paper towels and everything else. And so it made, it perpetuated that sense of panic. When you go to the grocery store and everything's empty, all of a sudden you're feeling a little bit like, maybe some other people know things that I don't know. Like maybe people know that like, we're not going to have any toilet paper for the rest of our lives. And so we've just got to hold on to everything we got. I'm sure you all heard about discrimination in terms of the Chinese Americans that had to deal with a level of discrimination. There was all kinds of stuff that was happening that we were hearing on the news over the last couple of years. So that sometimes becomes a thing where people, you know, feel like they are now discriminating against people that they may not have done so before in the past. There's that sense of hypervigilance. So sort of that elevated state where we are assessing potential threats now because our limbic system is kind of activated. We're kind of in a constant state of hypervigilance. We're in a constant state of feeling like what's going to happen next, right? And then rumors, you know, as in when we were talking about the panic, being able to sort of understand that, you know, there's all kinds of underlying rumors, and people are behaving oftentimes because they are buying into a rumor, whether it's that we're never going to have toilet paper again or something else. And so sometimes we can become a victim of those things also. And we're asking ourselves, you know, I think some of my favorite rumors from last year were that the vaccinations were inserting tracking devices into you. And, you know, my thought for that is your phone is actually tracking you, not the vaccine. So if you want, you know, you don't want to be tracked, get rid of your smartphone. Who's doing that? So, all right, then we're going into excessive media use. I know I found myself sort of doing this, especially when there's that feeling of uncertainty out there in the world. You want to get your hands on as much information as you can. And so oftentimes you've got the news going, you know, 24/7, you're reading articles about things. And, you know, we have to understand that even wanting to know things, if it is things that are going to activate our limbic system, we might need to back off of some of those things. We might need to turn the news off, you know, at night. We might need to take care of our need for information in other ways. And then obviously the social isolation, and I don't mean just social isolation from quarantining and things like that, but also just the social isolation of when things are uncertain. Sometimes many people will just kind of go into their cave and they sort of feel like, you know, the world is a scary place. Things out there are not safe. And so you retreat to your home. Okay. I do believe in terms of social isolation that it has truly been hardest for some of our elderly in the community. And I think it's also been very hard for school age kids. I think two groups that really do sort of need the social interaction. I think a lot of people in their middle ages obviously are either working or that kind of thing. And so even if they have taken their job online, there is some level of social activity. But for kids in school, and I think for the elderly population, it was especially hard because it really did limit the ability of socialization that you could get. So Forbes magazine reported that in the year 2021, how to maintain your mental health was Google searched more than it's ever been searched before. So that goes to show you, people were concerned about their mental health. All right, so what are some of the implications to mental health? Well, what's interesting, I think, is that I have seen more patients probably this year that have never really had, or sort of feel like they've never really dealt with any mental health issues before, and that this has kind of come on as a result of the pandemic. And so what you might see are depression, so resulting from social isolation and the loss of activities. You may have noticed this in your own life, right? I mean, your church has gone online. A lot of the other activities that you've done maybe have either waned, you're not doing them as much, or you've had to move them virtually. And so there is a level of social isolation that comes with that. And so, and also for many people, just the idea of making things online. I know when I transitioned from a face-to-face practice into a mostly fully telehealth system, it was pretty scary, learning to oh my gosh, I'm the first to admit I'm not tech savvy, and I feel like I have a weird energy around computers anyway. Like they like to go on the fritz when I'm around. So it just, for me, it was a scary thing to think about, taking my whole practice online. And so, for people that are even less tech savvy than me, I can imagine that would be very difficult and also very isolating because they don't know how to navigate that system. There's anxiety that results from fear of getting ill, worry about how long the pandemic will last, and also worry about financial concerns, and I also think the worry for family. I think there's a lot of, we do worry about whether you have older parents or whether you have younger kids in your life. You're worried about everybody's health and their mental health. Another thing that we've seen that's kind of come out of the pandemic is an increase in OCD. So obsessive compulsive disorder is sort of that disorder that either makes you have sort of these repetitive kind of intrusive thoughts or may require some kind of habitual kind of action. So, we have been stressing hand washing and hand sanitizing and all of that. And so we've definitely seen more of those disorders starting to appear because people are very, becoming very vigilant about making sure that they're hand washing. So we're starting to see some of those things, and that might be something that you notice that you might be also a little bit kind of like, oh, maybe I'm a little overly focused on that. Post-traumatic stress disorder is PTSD. That is the idea that you are feeling some level of trauma as a result of what is currently going on. So trauma is pretty subjective. You get to decide what's traumatic for you based on what your reaction is to it. So if you really do, there are a lot of people that are feeling very traumatized by what's happened as of the last few years. So we're definitely seeing more. I'm sure every time we hear of a new variant, we all probably have some level of PTSD. We all sort of go, oh my gosh, what's going to happen now? So that sense of hypervigilance. There's also, we're dealing with grief, right? So a lot of people have lost friends, a lot of people have lost family members. A lot of people have lost jobs, a source of income, you know, and people have, when we talk about loss of friends, I don't just mean losing friends due to death, but I have talked to lots of people that have had to part ways with friends because you just philosophically disagree on what's going on. You know, if you are someone who wants to be vaccinated and wants to be around other people that are vaccinated, and you have a friend that doesn't want to, then you have a decision that you end up having to make. And that can be a very painful decision when you have to decide, you know, do I no longer hang out with this person? And obviously this entire thing has become very politicized, but you know, just in terms of our own well-being, we have to decide what's safe for us and what's not, and what are we willing to tolerate and not. And so for people that have difficulty setting boundaries or being able to hold fast to something, it can be rather difficult to say no to somebody and to say, no, I'm sorry, you won't be able to come to my house for Christmas because you're not vaccinated, when that would be somebody that perhaps would come all the time. Another thing that we are seeing more and more of is substance use. So a lot of people are obviously using some form of substance, alcohol, drugs, to manage how they're feeling about everything that's going on. You know, again, people that would go out and socialize are now finding themselves at home. And so, you know, oftentimes drinking their sorrows away. And we have seen an increase in addiction. And I'll also add an increase in domestic violence too, because when we're isolating, we're home. And if one partner is abusing another, you will definitely see an increase in that the more time they spend at home together. Suicide, people perhaps contemplating suicide more just because of the increased rates of depression and anxiety. Usually suicide is something that we see. I did actually just read an article, but thankfully suicide rates have actually not gone up that much during the pandemic, which is good to know. All right. So what are the things that we need to take care of? I'm sure you kind of already knew this, but so we wanted to make sure we're taking care of our body. We want to make sure we're taking care of our mind, and we want to make sure that we're taking care of our community. And there's probably other things that you can think of that I don't have here. All right, so when we're taking care of the body, what are the important things that we really need to focus on? Because there's a lot of things we can talk about. Number one is sleep. And I don't know about all of you, but you know what? If I get a full 8 hours of sleep, I am one happy woman. And that doesn't happen very often. So if you are having issues with sleep, it really does make sense to try to do whatever you can to manage your sleep issues. We talk about sleep hygiene, about making sure that you stick to a sleep time and a wake up time every day, and you try to keep that the same every day. We talk about sort of turning off all the devices a few hours before you go to bed, so that your brain can actually settle down. Maybe just go to reading, like reading a book or listening to music or that kind of thing, so that you're not activating your brain as much. Physical activity. Making sure that we are getting enough physical activity. Now that, you know, someone tells me to work to physical activity, I just think of like running and cardio and sweating. And you know what? Some days that's great if that's what you want to do, but physical activity could just be stretching. You know, physical activity could just be yoga. It could just be going for a mile walk in the morning or in the evening. So let physical activity be whatever it needs to be for you. It does not need to be, you got to go to the gym 7 days a week. It can be whatever it needs to be. And you are allowed to incorporate it into your life. However you do that, but just try to get some kind of physical activity. Our bodies were made to move, and we need to be moving them. Nutrition, also probably not a big surprise, right? I know we like to be, all about our New Year's resolutions as we're moving into the new year. And I have finally decided that New Year's resolutions just don't work for me, because I'm just not as good as keeping promises to myself as I am to keeping promises to other people. So I, don't really worry about New Year's resolutions. I just try to do the best I can. And in terms of nutrition, I think sometimes small changes are important, especially if you know that your diet could use, a little revamping, just making some small changes. It doesn't have to be, 5 fruits and vegetables every day. If you're not used to eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, if you're eating 1 or 2 in a day, that is better than eating none. And so we need to treat ourselves with that level of compassion that, this is not all or nothing. It doesn't mean you're eating, the healthiest, cleanest diet 24/7, or, you're just living on fast food. There's a middle ground, and we have to learn that it's okay to be in that middle ground. I like to live by an 80-20 rule, that if 80% of the time you're doing everything you need to do, 20% of the time you can give yourself, you can ease up on yourself and allow yourself to have the chocolate cake or fruit cake, whatever you like. All right. The other thing that we need to do is avoid tobacco, the drugs, and the excessive alcohol use. Again, really important. I know the holidays can be that time where, definitely the alcohol gets to be a little bit much. So, it's nice as we reset for the new year and try to be a little better to ourselves. Again, limiting the screen time. You are activating your brain. It is rough on the eyes oftentimes to be on a screen all the time. So just be mindful of how much time you're actually spending on a screen, and allow yourself some off-screen time. Put the phone down, turn the computer off, read a book, read a magazine, do some stretching, that kind of thing. Just allow your body to sort of reset a little bit. Also, finding time for relaxation. So one of the things I want to say about this is that sometimes we are so good at keeping ourselves busy. And in my life, I see a lot of people who have a really hard time when they are just not doing something. The idea of sitting and relaxing is almost a stressful event. And so we have to learn to relax. We have to learn, and a lot of times what happens, especially for people with anxieties, is that as they relax, they find that their brain will not shut off, because the brain is just ruminating over things in their life. And that's why they keep themselves so actively busy all the time, because they don't have to think about all this other stuff. So if it's hard for you to relax, if you're really finding it hard to sort of shut off the brain, seek some help. Go talk to somebody. See if you can't work on trying to work some of that stuff out, because oftentimes either with therapy or with medications if needed, it's actually, you can work some of that stuff out where you actually will learn to relax, and then you'll actually really enjoy it, which is nice. All right, just a quote, take care of your body. It's the only place you have to live. Isn't that the truth? So just an important point. All right, so now taking care of the mind. Some of the things that we can do to maintain a healthy mind during times like this is to maintain a regular routine. Listen, when we're being quarantined, or things have shut down from time to time, it's really easy to sleep in late, go to bed late, stay up late, do all of the things that high school kids are doing during the summer. And we really need to keep ourselves in a place where we maintain a regular routine. Our bodies enjoy predictability. As much as we all love being on vacation, I don't know about you, but for me, a week and a half to 2 weeks of a vacation. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm ready to get back to my life. I'm ready to like get back to doing what I normally do, because I just don't like the lack of structure of being on vacation, interestingly enough. I mean, I probably should get some help for that. But I'm just saying that I think, the idea of maintaining a regular routine and keeping ourselves in that place where we know what our lives are going to look like day to day, mostly, is a good thing. And it's also a way for us to figure out when things are not going well for us. So for people that keep a good routine, if all of a sudden you're used to waking up at 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and now you're sleeping in until 8:30, 9 o'clock, that may be a good indication that there's something going on. And so oftentimes when we don't have a good routine, it's hard to tell when depression sets in or when you're feeling overly anxious, because you maybe sleep at random times during the day or you don't have a set schedule. But when you have a good routine, it's a lot easier to tell when things are disrupting it. And so it is important to maintain that level of routines just for the predictability, and also so you can keep yourself in check. What's going on with me? I'm not sleeping, or I'm waking up too early or too late. I'm staying up too late. What's going on with me? Again, limiting the exposure to news media. We talked about that earlier, just being very selective about where you get your media from. And also recognizing that the more exposure you have, the more this stuff, especially if you're an anxious type, it's going to stay in the brain. It's going to be hard for you to let it go. So if you know that about yourself, limit your news media. Staying busy, developing new hobbies, or learning something new. This has sort of been the bonus, I think, of the pandemic, is that people have developed new hobbies and have learned new things. I know people that have taken classes and worked on learning new languages. I myself took up some woodworking and started like refinishing furniture in my house, which has been an interesting experience, to say the least. But learning to do things that you haven't done before, right? Teaching yourself new hobbies. I know when we started with the masks, I pulled out a sewing machine my mother had bought me probably 20 years ago that I'd never used, taught myself how to use it, and started making masks. It helped me feel like I was doing something. And we do sort of feel like that. So if we can do something that feels like we're working towards a greater good, or we're enjoying things that maybe we haven't enjoyed before, then it can sort of help you in dealing with the stress of what's going on in the world. Focus on positive thoughts. Okay, so this one's, I don't know, this one's a little iffy for me, only because when I say focus on positive thoughts and you've got a negative thought in your head, it's really hard to just make it go away. What I like to say is actually just have an alternate thought. Your first thought may not be great. Your first thought may be a negative thought, especially if that is kind of how you think about things. And so if you tend to find yourself in that place, it's not about not having that thought. It's more about, well, what's an alternate thought? If I think that, this is never going to end, right? An alternate thought might be, I don't know when this is going to end. Not, I don't think it's going to end, but I don't know when it's going to end. Or, we'll work it through. The world has been through other difficult times before, and it's made its survived, and it's made its way through, and we will do the same thing. And so acknowledging whatever the difficulty is, but also leaning into a more sort of positive way of seeing it or looking at it. Then there's the spiritual connection. So whether it's church, whether it's meditation, whether it's some form of yoga or Reiki or whatever you're into, finding some way to spiritually connect. I think that has really become an important thing, because there's a lot of why questions. Why is this happening? Why are we in this situation? All of that stuff. And we don't have all the answers to all of that. And so there are things that we have to, that we just have to give to God, let's just say. You know, you got to just turn it over. Maybe that's, you know, how you're feeling about something. If you feel like you can't, if there are things in your life that you can't change, you know what? You might have to recognize that you just don't have any control over it, and you hand that over to the powers that be. So what I like to have, especially little kids, when they have difficulty with things that they can't control, so if they have a belief in a God, what we do is we make a God box, and they can design and create it however they want out of a shoebox or whatever. And, you know, I've asked adults to do this too. Cut a little slit in the top, and things that you cannot control, you write on a piece of paper and you put it in the God box. And when you put it in the God box, then basically what you're saying, you're also doing that act of like releasing whatever that issue is. When you put it in the God box, then you recognize that I am no longer worrying about this. I'm not going to hold on to this concern. And when you start worrying about it, then you got to recognize, well, you're not letting God do his work. So, you know, maybe, you know, go pull that. If you want to start worrying about it, go pull that piece of paper out of the God box, because you're basically telling God, you're not working fast enough for me. I'm going to need to go back to worrying about this. Thank you very much. And then set priorities. So, you know, prioritize your mental health, prioritize the things, your own health and your own wellness. It is very important. And I know, you know, for a lot of people that like to give of their time and give of their energy to other people, sometimes we're not terribly good at setting priorities in terms of our own mental health. We're usually always very concerned about everybody else's. So make sure you set priorities for yourself. All right. Another quote: to experience peace does not mean that your life is always blissful. It means that you are capable of tapping into a blissful state of mind amidst the normal chaos of a hectic life. So life is hectic. You know, life comes at us from all directions oftentimes. And what we need to recognize is that, I don't know, I'm a big believer in all things happen for a reason. So I think if that's the mindset, just being able to really be in that place of, you know what, I can get through this. I can get through this. All right. Taking care of your community. So obviously making connections in your community with perhaps people in your neighborhood. You know, you guys have a wonderful community in your church. And so, you know, making those connections and doing for other people. And then supporting a family member or a friend. So perhaps somebody in your circle that perhaps is not doing as well or needs something, being able to offer something to that person. The next thing, that just a quote, again, your job is to fill your own cup so it overflows. Then you can serve others joyfully from your saucer. I love that because, as I said, I think sometimes we become, especially, you know, people that are in the healthcare profession and that kind of thing, you know, there's a lot of burnout going on. And so what we need to recognize is that people have to take care of themselves. They have to fill their own cups. And as you do that, then you have the ability to also take care of others. Okay, so I'm going to offer you a few tools. The first thing I like to talk about is square breathing. Square breathing is this idea that the way that we breathe helps control our physiological response to anxiety and to stress. So if you are someone that has ever dealt with a level of anxiety or even panic, you may have been taught some kind of breathing technique to help lower your stress and anxiety. Square breathing is one of those things. And the reason we call it square breathing is it basically works in fours. So you take a deep inhale through your nose into your belly, and you do it for a count of 4. You hold that breath in your belly for a count of 4. And then you exhale through your mouth like you're blowing out a candle also for a count of 4. You do that 4 times. And so that's why we call it square breathing. And what you'll notice is after taking an inhalation and an exhalation in that way, your body will respond to how you're breathing. Because what happens when we get stressed is our organ systems speed up. So you might notice your heart starts beating fast. Some people sweat in their hands. The brain starts like chattering and all of this other stuff. So everything gets sped up. When you deliberately slow your breath down, what ends up happening is the rest of the body has to now take their cue from the breath. So the rest of the body goes, wait a minute, we can't speed up because breath is slowing down. So we got to slow down too. And it will give you an immediate relief in terms of like slowing your nervous system down a little bit so that you can just have a moment of like, okay, it's not getting out of control. You can do it as many times as you want. You can do this, square breathing. You can do it for 4 breaths. You can do it for 8, 16, whatever you like, until you get it to a place where you're feeling more comfortable. That's good in the moment when you're having anxiety and stress. In the moment, that's a good way to handle it. In terms of the long term or over time, keeping a gratitude journal is also really, really good. What we know about gratitude is that the more you appreciate what you have, the more you feel like you have. So I like to say gratitude is an attitude, right? Because it's not just something that you like, I think Thanksgiving is wonderful, but it's like, that's the day we all decide we're going to be grateful and we're all going to be thankful for what we have. But truthfully, that is really just the way, in my opinion, we should exist. We should exist in a place of gratitude. When we are focused on the things that we are grateful for, the things that may ordinarily bother us don't seem to exist as much, or they don't seem to at least bother us as much. Because when we're focused on the things that are actually working in our life, we're not focused on the other stuff. And that makes life much more manageable. If you're coming from a place of gratitude, if you're coming from a place of thankfulness and knowing that you have all of these blessings in your life, it makes life much easier in times of difficulty, because you can wire your brain to actually be more grateful. So the more you do it, the more you'll actually get good at doing it. I like to tell people, just write 3 things down every day that you're grateful for. And what that does is it primes your brain to be looking during the day for things to be grateful for. Because if you know you have to write them down later in the day, you're going to be grateful for the person that held the door open for you when you were at Costco. Or you're going to be grateful for the person that, let you go ahead of them at the grocery store. And so, but we forget those things when we're not actually consciously focusing on them. At the end of the day, you might have forgotten that somebody held the door open for you at Costco. But if you need to write down 3 things you're grateful for, all of a sudden you're going to remember it. All right, mindfulness exercises. So you may have heard of the word mindfulness, and mindfulness is this wonderful ability to stay in the present moment. When we're living in a place of anxiety or depression, anxiety is oftentimes this worry about things that are coming up. Depression is oftentimes sort of this concern and worry about things that have happened in the past. So when we learn to be more mindful, we learn to live in the present moment. That is a wonderful place to exist. And I like to live by the mantra that everything is right in this moment. When we learn to recognize that everything is right with the world in this very moment, all of a sudden it makes you think about, well, what am I worried about then? Because if everything's right in this moment, and if everything's right 5 seconds from now, and 5 days from now, and 5 years from now, what am I worried about? Things always work out. They do. They really do always work out. I mean, look back on your own life. Has there ever been a time when things didn't work out? Things work out. In the end, things work out. Not saying they're not hard, not saying they're not challenging, but they do work out. All right. So a really good way to become mindful, if you want to work on that, is to open up your senses. So start asking yourself, what are 5 things I can see? And look around the room. For people that come to therapy with me, sometimes I will ask them to look around the room and name off 10 things, right? And I keep count, and I let them sort of let their eyes wander around the room and name off 10 things. And the point of illustrating that is so that they can understand that while they're naming off those 10 things, they're not able to think about anything else. So when you are training your brain to think about one thing, your brain doesn't have the capacity to think about more than one thing at a time. So if you're looking around the room and you're thinking, oh, wow, like, I really love the way my Christmas tree looks, and you're just focused on that, all of a sudden, you're not worried about everything else. You're not thinking about everything else because your brain cannot do it. You just can't think of more than one thing at a time. My husband likes to think he can, but he can't. He only knows how to multitask. I tell him, you're really good at multitasking, but your brain is still switching gears. You're still not thinking about more than one thing at a time. So if you have never tried a mindfulness exercise, try that. Try looking around, seeing things you can see, things you can smell, things you can taste or touch, and really pay attention to that. And the more that you allow yourself to stay in that place, the more you'll recognize that it's easier to stay in the present moment. I tell people, do it during like the most mundane tasks of your life. So brushing your teeth, folding laundry, right? If you can open up your senses and make brushing your teeth an experience of the senses, all of a sudden you recognize that you smell things, you taste things, you feel things. And brushing our teeth is usually just something that we do mindlessly, but when you make it a mindful experience, it's kind of interesting how much is going on in the mouth, and we're not even paying attention to it. And all of the other senses that are involved in the action of brushing your teeth or taking a shower. I used to hate folding laundry, but I learned how to make folding laundry a mindful experience. And now I actually doesn't bother. I can't say I love it, but it does not bother me nearly as much, because now I focus on the fabrics and I focus on smoothing out the wrinkles and taking, a basket of chaos and turning them into neat little stacks. All of a sudden, it feels very gratifying now. And so because that's the focus, and I'm not thinking about like, oh, what am I cooking for dinner while I'm folding laundry, and making it a mindless experience, now all of a sudden it doesn't feel so bad. All right, I think I am close to the end here, so I just wanted to give you a couple references. And I know you guys go to a coffee hour or whatever, I don't know if it's an hour, but however long it is, and I will make myself available during that time if there are any questions from anybody. So I assume I will silence myself now.
Though days be dark with storms and burdens weigh my heart, the driver's
Now time for our offering. Today is the first Sunday of the month, so we share our plate with McDonald Training Center. At MTC, they believe in shattering barriers and opening doors to opportunities for people with all disabilities. United with a shared purpose, they work to make our community more inclusive, equitable, flexible, and open to the talents of all people. You can make your donation on their website at mcdonaldcenter.org. Thank you for your continued and generous support to this organization. Our closing words today are by Elizabeth Sell Jones. We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you for choosing to spend your time with us today. Our hope for you is that the coming days are filled with kindness, wisdom, and love. Blessed be. See you at coffee hour.